Hi everyone, welcome back to Plant Boy. I hope you're doing well through these insane times. Today, obviously, we are going to be talking about plants that I regret buying. We'll get into each of these kind of in detail, but prior to doing so, I would like to just mention my social medias are linked down below. There are timestamps if you want to skip around to specific plants. And thank you all for watching. If you enjoy the video, like it or dislike it. If you didn't, consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this. I really do appreciate all of your support, and it has been very interesting to kind of get to know some of you and interact. It's been quite a cool journey. So obviously these are plants that I regret buying for one reason or another. Some of these plants I don't have in front of me because they're dead. But we'll get into that. Starting off at number 1, in no specific order, we have the ruby ficus. This is a very interesting ficus. I really like Ficus elasticas. I think they're relatively easy to care for, and this guy is not really any exception. It has been a relatively easy plant to care for. It's not super needy. The only thing that these guys really need is a lot of bright and direct light. However, unless you are really fixated on having kind of jewel-toned red leaves until they mature and turn into this more like creamy, warm-toned foliage, I wouldn't really recommend this plant. If you're looking for a variegated ficus, I would 10 out of 10 recommend the Taniki, which is that green, mint, white, dark green, variegated ficus. Very similar to this, just different color palette. That guy has done so much better for me. Needs a little bit less light from my personal experience and just has looked much more prolific than this plant. I'm not really crazy about it and I wouldn't really recommend it. The next plant on my list is basically any croton. This includes garden crotons, gold dust, and any other kind of variety. I believe a Picasso paintbrush is another croton as well. I'm not a fan. Wouldn't recommend buying them unless you have a lot of bright direct light to really bring out that different toned foliage. I think they're very visually striking plants, but I just don't have the necessary requirements to keep them happy. Furthermore, you need high humidity for those plants from my personal experience as well. And I kept on getting mites and mealybugs and things like that. Just not a good recipe for success. I'm fighting mealybugs on my string of pearls, which actually originated on a gold dust croton that was sitting right beside it, and they have not gone away. So think about the plants that you bring into your space. The next plant is going to be the lucky bamboo. I believe that this is in the Dracaena genus, similar to like a limelight or a Durano Dracaena. Speaking of Durano Dracaenas, I just repotted one 2 videos ago. If you want to see that, it's just like a casual chit chat video. But this is just unimpressive. I'm just not really a fan of this plant. A lot of these self-heading plants, I cannot keep the lower foliage alive, which I know is relatively common whenever you have these self-heading plants because the plant is preserving its energy and pushing it out of the top for new growth rather than the old growth. So it decides to kill back the old growth. However, whenever I buy these plants from the nurseries, they look so much more full and bushy. I'm not sure if it's a humidity problem. I don't think it's a light problem, but lucky bamboo just was not my plant. Speaking of those self-heading plants that constantly have dead foliage on the bottom that are pushing out new growth at the top, we have any Dieffenbachia. This is a Dieffenbachia Camilla. I also have a tropic snow and one that I can't think of the variety name. It's just like a dark green with white veins. But I mean, what can I say? This is just not impressive. This is not pretty. Whenever I buy these plants from nurseries, like I said, those lower leaves stay very happy. They look very full and bushy. And then as soon as I bring them into my home, they start to die back on the bottom and they're just not nearly as happy. This branch here only has 2 leaves on it. All of them do. This one only has 1. This one's like brand new, so it just has like 1 older leaf. Yeah, I mean, Dieffenbachias are nice if you can figure out what they really like. I think that it may be a humidity problem, but I think I'm done with the Dieffenbachias for now. The next plant is going to be the Pilea Peperomioides, or the Chinese money plant. This may be controversial because I see a lot of these on Instagram and other social media platforms that people really love, and it is a very visually striking plant, very different than many other plants that you can find. However, I personally have just found them to be kind of a nuisance to take care of. I don't like wiping down this foliage. I find it difficult to clean. Furthermore, we have that problem where the lower foliage dies back. I have a lot of crispy leaves or yellowing leaves. It always falls over in windy conditions if it's outside because it's top heavy and has this broad foliage and it gets aphids on it. I don't recommend this plant unless you are very fixated on the foliage and you really want to have something that is visually striking like this. But personally, I don't think I'm going to be purchasing any more of these Pilea Peperomioides. If you have the right conditions for them, which I think it may be a mixture of things for me, what I'm doing wrong, they are nice plants and they definitely can fill out very well and get very tall and bushy and very attractive, but I'm just not a fan. The next plant I'm going to be talking about is the Tradescantia Zebrina, which I believe is how you pronounce it. It's also known as the Wandering Jew. This is going to be a plant that loves a lot of bright indirect light, even some bright direct light very moderately, and very, very high humidity from my experience. I had a variegated one that was out on my porch and it did so wonderfully, as you can see here. And as soon as I brought it inside, it died within like a month. All that foliage started to brown very, very quickly, and it just was not happy with me at all. So I just cut the cord on it, composted it. Was not a fan. I tried to propagate it, and it has a very delicate root system as well, which I found a little bit more difficult to water propagate. So if you're thinking about Wandering Jew, do your research on the conditions that it requires and make sure that you can support them. The last plant that I'm going to be talking about is the Othonna Capensis, or the string of rubies or string of pickles, also is what it's known as. This is a jewel-toned South African succulent, and I found it very, very striking. I bought it online and it stayed alive for me for a pretty large majority of time. It did well until I decided to repot it. Once I put it into a new pot and even put it in a more bright light situation, it just was not happy with me for whatever reason. I think that it needed much more light and it actually preferred to be a little bit on the root bound side. And it, from my experience, has a very delicate root system as well, similar to like a Hoya. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at this plant. It is very visually striking, but in terms of visually striking plants versus like the ease of care of these plants, we're kind of discussing like a style versus comfort, beauty is pain kind of scenario. And that is very much my experience with the string of rubies or string of pickles. Was not a fan. It got very leggy on me, very stringy. Wasn't a fan. Definitely regretted that purchase until it became so far gone that I just decided to compost it. So yeah, everyone, I hope that you all have better luck with these plants than I do. The Ruby Ficus is really the only one that I don't have poor luck with, that I just kind of was underwhelmed with, as well as the Lucky Bamboo. But a lot of these plants just did not do well with me, and I could not provide them the conditions that they were looking for. If you can, more power to you. We all have our thing, but these were not it. But I hope you all enjoyed the content and maybe you were validated in your experience through mine. Maybe you really don't like Dieffenbachias or were underwhelmed by the Ruby Ficus. Let me know. It's very interesting to hear your experience with these plants as well. And I will hope to see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.